Good morning. November is Diabetes Awareness Month, so I will be talking a little bit more about diabetes, and today I will be talking about diabetics and calluses. Calluses are a little bit more important in someone with diabetes. It's important to be aware of them because those with diabetes, there are some complications that can reduce blood flow or sensation to the foot. So if you develop something like a callus, it can lead to something more severe because it might not heal properly, or there might not be enough sensation to the area to know that there is a problem. So calluses form because there's pressure where there shouldn't be, or excess pressure. So in a lot of people, a callus will form, maybe some pain will develop, so then they'll subconsciously or consciously avoid that area to prevent it from getting worse. In a diabetic, that might not be the case. They might not feel that pressure point and not avoid the area, so the pressure becomes worse and worse and can lead to a cut and maybe an ulcer. Ulcers, for those who don't know, is a cut that doesn't heal properly. So that can become quite severe. So if it's not taken care of properly. So you always want to take care of these ulcers, definitely if you notice that they have developed. So what an ulcer does is it's a wound, it might not heal properly because a diabetic doesn't have the proper blood flow or sensation to the area. There's the pressure builds, there's not enough healing there, so that's why it can get worse. In extreme situations, that can lead to an amputation. So you want to avoid the ulcer to get to that point. So avoiding it, make sure you're looking at your feet regularly, maybe even daily, checking your shoes, make sure there's nothing inside the shoe that's causing any irritation. Sometimes you want to take out the insole and check underneath as well. There can be little rocks or even tacks or something that's gotten inside the shoe that you don't even know it's there because there's decreased sensation to the foot. So always check your shoes, make sure there's nothing around there. Find shoes that fit properly. Make sure they're not too tight. Find shoes that don't have any seams around the inside. That also prevents some rubbing. And also find the correct shoe for you. So if you're wearing a shoe that's not very supportive, then it can cause other issues. Your foot can be rolling in and pushing into the shoe, or rolling out and pushing it outside of the shoe. So always look for the right shoe, make sure there are no seams and it's fitting properly. Orthotics can be, or any support can be important for those with diabetes, because if the foot is moving in a specific way and causing callusing, then it can lead to something more severe. So for example, if your foot rolls in and you constantly roll off of the inside of the toe, that can cause pressure on the inside of the toe and lead to a callus. So what is a callus? A callus is thickened skin. Most of the time you can see it as a little bit of a hardened skin, thickened. If it's cracking, that might not be a callus. That might be something related to either dry skin, or might be some sort of fungus that you need to take care of. But a callus is thickened skin. Now you also want to be aware of redness on the foot, or corns, or even some warts, but warts are not really pressure related. You're more looking for corns, redness, and calluses if you need to be aware of pressure points on the foot. I'll go over some of the more common areas that diabetics can develop an ulcer. So look for calluses, redness, and any pressure in those specific spots.
The first area we'll focus on is the big toe. So the big toe, you can develop a callus on the inside of the big toe right here, or even on the bottom. And the reason is because when you're walking, sometimes you can push off more along the inside of that big toe instead of through the middle of the foot. So it puts more pressure along this toe. If we look closely at this big toe, you can see how there is some callusing through here. So if you notice something like this and you're a diabetic, this is something to really be aware of. When you develop a callus on the bottom of the toe here, you want to take a look at the proper support to prevent any pressure through here, and the proper shoes so that they're wide enough, they're not pressing against the inside of the toe here.
When I talk about walking and toeing off, so normally you should push off about like this, but if you're toeing off on the inside like this, it can put a lot of pressure on this toe. And if you're wearing a shoe and you're toeing off on the inside, it can really press against the inside of that shoe.
Another area is at the ball of the foot here. Typically, a callus will develop here because this arch can collapse. So if this arch collapses and there's a little bit of a dome here, then it puts a lot more pressure on the ball of the foot and it can create callusing there. So in this case, you want to look for support to increase the ball of the foot, release the pressure through here, maybe some cushioning, as well as proper shoes so that there's enough support or enough cushioning between the floor, the hard floor, and your bones or the foot. The next area is around the arch of the foot. And the reason why a callus might develop here is because if it's a very collapsed foot, the bones here will start to stick out and they'll start to rub on the floor. So there's a bone around here. It's called the navicular. That tends to shift out. You might see a bit of a bump, and that's usually the bone that will create the callus. So if you look at the foot from the side, it's typically around here. So arch collapses and it can create the callus right under here. With this kind of callus, you want to look for the proper support that pushes everything up so there's less rubbing on that bone. You might need a bit of a groove here depending on how severe that bone is, how severe it's pushing out. And also the proper shoes so that the support and the shoes are complementing each other and there's less pressure on this bone, because it is possible this bone could be rubbing against the side of the shoe as well. The tops of the toes is another area. If these toes are clawed like this, then it can rub against the top of the shoe. So finding the proper shoe is probably the most important. Find something that's deep enough so that these toes aren't rubbing along the top, and find something that's stretchy so that if it is touching, that it can push through the top of the fabric on the shoe, and so it's not too tight here. Proper support might be important as well. It really depends on what's going on. If you can pull them out, it's possible that support at the ball of the foot can help to release these toes, but it also depends on how rigid these are.
So in general, if there are some calluses and you need to address them, take a look where the callus is and why there could be a pressure point there. Look at your shoes, look at the activities you're doing, or look at the way that you're walking. If you need something like support, like orthotics or proper footwear, someone like myself, a podorthist, or somebody who knows what they're doing, to take a look at your foot and see if you need any different shoes or any support. And then always seek out a professional when you need a little extra help, and that could just be looking at the bottom of your foot. If you can't look at the bottom of your foot and you have problems doing that, then you might want to look at going to a professional like a foot care nurse or a foot doctor like a podiatrist or even a chiropodist. Take a look at your foot every month, every 3 months. Maybe they can trim your nails, make sure there's nothing going on, and they'd also look at all your feet, make sure there's nothing developing that shouldn't be. But you also should be taking a look. So if you can't take a look at the bottom of your foot and you don't have anybody that can do that for you, you can use a mirror. Put your foot up against a mirror. You can put the mirror on the ground and take a look at your foot that way. Or you can use your camera, change it around to your selfie camera, and then put it on the ground, put your foot over, and make sure there's nothing going on the bottom of your foot. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and I would be happy to help.